Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability, SVTAGS. Today I have with me a lady who I'm just so honored that you came out from where you, we're going to tell everybody where you came out from. It's Sally Assante. You're a writer. You've had many hats. Welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Sally.
Well, thank you, Heather. I'm delighted to be here. Currently, I live in the central mountains of Mexico, the Sierra Madres, in a little town called Ajijic, which is on Lake Chapala. And I have flown up here this weekend directly from Guadalajara. It's very near Guadalajara.
About 20 minutes or so?
It's a little longer than that, but that's only because of traffic.
Okay.
To get to Guadalajara, we have probably about a half hour, 40 minutes.
And over, I think it's 1.5 million or more than that in Guadalajara, so it's huge.
Yeah, it's a large city. It's the second largest city in Mexico, behind obviously Mexico City. And probably in the greater Guadalajara area, it's larger than 1.5 million.
And from what I understand, and we may be visiting there to do a show, it's the tech capital of Mexico.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's where all the tech stuff happens. I'm going to pull up the first slide, which is an adorable slide of you.
Okay.
And there you are when you were a young girl.
Yes.
How old were you there?
I think about 3.
Okay. And then I pulled up, where did you say you grew up in the coast?
On the Gulf Coast of Alabama.
So I just kind of Googled, and those were some pictures that came up, and
Okay.
It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I've driven, we can pull that down. I've driven through, from Texas to New Orleans,
Yep.
and then down to Pensacola, Florida, and the coast is just so beautiful. I
It
haven't
is.
been there since Katrina, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Okay.
tell us a little bit about your background and what did you go to school for? Where are you
Well,
from?
that's, like I said, I grew up in the Mobile, Alabama area, and after that, my family moved to New Orleans.
And you got married young?
Get married young, had my children young, and then we moved to my family moved to the West Coast. We moved to Los Angeles. That was a time period where the men had to serve in the military, and my husband had gone through ROTC at Tulane, and so he had to serve his 3 years, and we came out to California at that time, loved it.
And for people that don't know, Tulane, is that in New Orleans?
That's in New Orleans.
Okay.
It's a private university in New Orleans.
It's supposed to be one of the best.
It's a good school, a very good school, enjoys a very nice reputation. But when we came out to California, Southern California, by then my girls were getting to school age, and we liked the schools a lot, and so we stayed. Even after he was out of the military, we stayed on for a number of years. And then eventually we kind of wanderers, we made our way to Central Texas, the Austin area, and my children continued. The girls by then were starting to get a little bit older. By the time they were in middle school, and I had always been a stay-at-home mom. And we made the decision that I would go to school, and I wanted to. I had never gone through college, just taken courses here and there, but not a real dedicated program. And I decided to become a court reporter. So I started the court reporting school.
And that was in Austin?
That's where I started, was in Austin, Texas. And it's about a 3-year program, but I was in a hurry, which is kind of the way I live my life. And so I got through in about 2 years.
So, and now, so you're retired.
I'm retired. I continued that career for around 25, 28 years.
And I'm going to hold this up. I don't know if we can get a close-up of this. This is your new book.
Yes.
And so this is your first book. You're writing another one, and
Yes.
it's called Bycatch. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's correct.
And it's, the definition at the beginning says things that are caught in the net of the fishermen.
Yes.
That aren't really supposed to be what they're catching.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the theme of the book, and we can talk about that a little bit. But let's bring up the first slide. And this first slide, or second slide, excuse me, that's you in front of?
That's in front of the Peace Palace in The Hague, One summer, I think it was the summer of 1991, if I'm not mistaken.
And that was before you moved to Rwanda or to
Yes,
Tanzania?
that was before that.
Then the left side, and so you traveled the world to be a court reporter. The left or the right side, what is on the right side there?
On the right and the top are both of those pictures are taken from a safari lodge in Arusha, Tanzania, right outside Arusha. And it's called Tarangire Lodge, and I went there on a frequent basis.
And in your book, you kind of talk
and
about it a little
I
bit.
make reference to it in the book.
And the book it's a mixture of fiction and reality, and it has a love story, but it also talks about the genocide in Rwanda. And at first it's a little hard to read at first because of what happens, but the love story makes you want to keep going and then see what happens, and it's just a great book.
Well, thank you.
So what brought you there? Again, this is a little fiction, but there's a little reality mixed in.
Well, it certainly is. It's a novel, and so therefore, by definition, it's fiction. But it does incorporate true events. And I was court reporting at the time, and most of my career was in federal court, different cities in Miami and New Orleans and Southern California. But I saw an advertisement in our trade magazine for a position with the UN, with the United Nations, in East Africa, in the country of Tanzania.
And at that time you were not married?
No, I was single by then.
So, hey, travel and...
Take off you go. And so I was very attracted to the job and applied for it and felt very fortunate that I was asked to come. And then once I was there, I was asked to be the supervisor of these. There were 17 court reporters, both French and English languages, because the UN uses both languages officially. All of their proceedings and documents are in both languages.
So let's pull up another slide, and I'm not sure if this is the one it does. So tell us about the one on the bottom part. Are those the court reporters on one side?
No, what you see there is you're viewing the courtroom from the spectator section.
Okay.
And there is a wall of glass. It's bulletproof
I was gonna
glass.
ask, so that's bulletproof. Okay.
And so those people we see on the right-hand corner, those are spectators looking into the courtroom. And in there we have, you see a little bit of red. That's the robes that the tribunal.
In the back, yep.
It's 3 judges.
And the top, tell us what that is, because you see it in the back too. The logo on the right top, the tribunal.
Okay, on the right-hand side, all of the UN divisions or departments have their own logos.
Okay.
And the logo there with the scales of justice, that logo was designed by an African American, actually, who was also part of the ICTR, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda.
So that was specifically for that. And the top one is part of a memorial that we'll see on another side. We can pull that down. But basically over a million people?
Close to 1 million. They don't have exact numbers, Heather.
Close to 1 million people passed away.
They were killed.
In the genocide.
Yes.
And over 100,000 were jailed.
Over 125,000 what we call random killers were jailed and tried in Rwanda. The UN chose to charge only the people they considered the masterminds or the architects of the genocide. So where I was working was not in Rwanda, it was in Tanzania, and we were trying only those 93.
We're going to pull up another slide right now. This should be slide 4. And so this is you.
That's me.
And did I get the place wrong though?
Yeah, well, that was in Tanzania.
Tanzania, not
right.
Rwanda.
I was out on a safari.
And it's, how do you say that, Masai?
The Maasai.
And around 1990s, 95, 94?
I was there from 97 to 99.
Okay, and they're wearing red, and that's specific to their...
That's customary for them. Those red cloaks that they wear are called shukas.
Shukas, okay. And we pull that down. So again, it's based on some reality, some fiction, the book, and it's a page turner. Once you get going, you can't put it down.
Thank you.
We're going to pull up another slide because I'm a little bit behind. We're going to pull up slide 5, I believe. This is part to the other one that we saw earlier, where again it's a memorial.
That is, they have established several memorials throughout the country of Rwanda because it was a huge event for the country, obviously. and they have created these memorials out of respect for the victims.
And this is a church here.
The one on the lower left is a church, the scene of a church. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 5,000 people were killed in that church.
Okay. Wow.
And then the top, the upper photograph was just a memorial gathering the skeletal remains of many of those victims.
And so I talked to you a little bit about this last night, but the romance in it, the character's based loosely on you.
Yeah.
And the romance in it, is it a truth or fiction?
No, that was fiction.
Okay.
Well, here's why I introduced that in the book. As you will remember, our protagonist, Nicole Tierney, Nicole had issues with relationships, and
as most people do.
She had a lot of trouble making commitments, and what we did at the UN, because we were listening day after day and year after year to horrific testimony, and so the staff members took time off, and we kind of chose those times not to talk about any of the testimony, and we would go on safari, or we went out to eat frequently, or we'd go up to Nairobi to spend the weekend, things to just kind of get away, chill out, before we come back on Monday morning and start all over again. And so I felt that the reader deserved the same kind of relief, because I know that some of the testimony...
Well, and that's the romance in it does take you, away from the horrors that you're reading about, and it wouldn't be not palatable. That's not the right word, but you wouldn't be able to take that.
You needed a break.
Yeah, if every chapter was about that.
Exactly.
So the romance, all fiction. It was great romance in there. The warnings, the safety warnings. Do you want to talk about that when you were there? I know you have a story about that. Tell us about the story about the safety, and is it still safe to go there? And tell us about the warnings that you had then.
Okay, I was one of the few. There were very few Americans. There were about 4 of us out of about 800 staff members, and they were from all over the world. And one of the first things that the chief of security chose to do was sort of an orientation. And so we went into his office, and he asked, "Are any of you planning on buying a car?" I said, "Well, yes, I'm used to having my independence, and I was going to buy a car." And so he wanted to talk to me about driving in Tanzania. And he said, "Should you by chance be driving along day or night and you see a body in the middle of the road, don't stop." Well, that's just contrary to all of our instincts. And I asked him, "Why is that?" He said, "More than likely it will be an ambush." So
not really somebody laying on the right side of the road that's passed out or whatever.
Yeah. And I did have that happen once. I was driving at night on an errand, and sure enough, my headlights picked up what I thought was a body in the middle of the road. I immediately, when I got to town, rushed into the nearest facility, which happened to be a hotel, and reported it. And I don't know whatever became of that.
But you didn't stop.
I did not stop. I followed his instructions.
So the woman in the book was waiting for a car. So that was kind of based on your real experience too. Then you were waiting for a car to come. We're going to talk about the characters now in the book. And some of them, the president, I know I'm going to murder the last name. How do you say? His name was
Habyarimana.
Okay, so let's pull up the first slide with that. We should have a slide with the president. Oh, no, actually, let's talk about this.
Oh, okay.
So I think we skipped this one. So this is Leo. In the book, Leo on the right there is a safari owner.
He owns a tour operation.
And in the book, his name is?
Max.
So it's based on this gentleman. And then tell us about the boys there and what they're doing.
Those boys are young Maasai. They will become Maasai warriors. And what they end up doing is they start out as just kiddos. As you can see, they're young children. And when they reach a certain age, or when their family has enough money to pay for the celebration, they're circumcised. And after they're circumcised, they put the white paint on their face, and they must go on a trek into the bush by themselves.
And these aren't babies. These are like 10, 12.
I think they were probably 8 to 12.
So that's got to be painful. And then they have to go on a trek.
Used to be they had to kill a lion to prove their manhood.
And then what's the bottom photo there too? That's a separate photo on the bottom.
The bottom photograph is a a picture of the tribunal headquarters.
Okay, and on the left are some children.
Those children were my neighbors.
Okay.
And every day I'd come home from work, and they'd rush out to meet me when I got home.
Well, they're adorable. And
They're
then
precious.
after reading the book and having images in your mind about the children and the children that passed away and the horrors, it's great to see children there thriving
and happy.
And happy.
Of course.
So let's pull up another slide, and hopefully this is the one with the president. Yep. So there's the president.
Yep.
And what happened to him? There's a plane there. Tell us a little bit.
All right. He was traveling in the airplane you see there, which was a gift from the Prime Minister of France.
Of France. Okay.
And President Havyarimana he was a Hutu, as you will remember from the book.
Hutu, Tutsi?
We have two major tribes. We have the Hutu and the Tutsi, and then a very small percentage of the population of Rwanda were the Twa.
Okay, but to focus on this,
all right,
the plane.
He had become very unpopular with his own tribe, the Hutu.
The Hutu.
Because he was kind of catering to the Tutsi.
And in real life, the plane was
shot down.
And that's what started all of the...
The next day, the genocide started.
Genocide started,
yeah.
and that was
1994.
94. And then down at the bottom there, Mr. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name.
That is Georges Rutaganda, and he was one of the ones that that the UN was charging as an architect, as I said earlier, of the genocide. And Georges Rutaganda had been named, from many of your viewers will remember the movie Hotel Rwanda.
Okay.
And in the movie Hotel Rwanda, Paul Rusesabagina, who was the manager of a hotel there, he needed a person locally to he needed to bribe people. He wanted people to leave his hotel alone because he was hiding over 1,000 Tutsi. And so he had all these people that he would, now you need to stay away, and what do you need to stay? What can I give you to make you stay away? And in the film Hotel Rwanda, they actually used Georges Rutaganda's real name. And he was a go-to person. You could see it on his military uniform, Rutaganda. I never heard any of that testimony in the courtroom.
And he plays a figure in your book.
He does.
And he's not a good figure.
I focus on 3 of what they were called génocidaires. That's the French word for people who commit genocide.
So I'm going to pull up another slide really quick too, because we're behind and we've got about 10 minutes. Who are these folks here?
Okay, let's start with Paul Kagame. He is the current president of Rwanda.
Okay.
And during the genocide,
he was a Tutsi, or
he is a Tutsi.
He's a Tutsi.
No question about that. And during the genocide.
And then the other person, really quick too.
Those 2 photographs are of Mr. Jean-Paul Akayesu.
Okay, we can close that. So, and he was one of the figures.
He was one of the defendants.
Defendants in your book.
Yeah.
And in real life.
Yeah.
And so after the genocide, this gentleman took over after the other president died, right? The one that was on the top.
Yes, no, he wasn't immediately. He was what he did is he led the Tutsi forces who stopped the genocide. And then eventually he was for a while vice president, and now he's president of Rwanda.
And they play a key role in this book.
Yes.
And again, it follows some history, and then there's some fiction in there.
Correct.
What's the strangest thing that happened to you when you were there?
When I was there, the strangest thing?
Yeah, the strangest thing that happened to you when you were
Oh, goodness.
there.
Well, if let's talk about the fun, strange things. Was being charged by an elephant. It has nothing to do with the genocide. It has nothing to do with my work. But
the naked man.
Huh?
The naked man.
Well, that happened too. All right, I'll talk about that because that was most unusual. I guess a lot of people have experiences if they've been on safari with elephants. One night I'm awakened by a shrill whistle. And I get up to see what in the world is going on. And I look out my window, and we had what we called askaris, and askaris were security guards. And this man was ancient. He couldn't have stopped anything from happening, but he was a sweet fellow. And he's blowing this whistle. And I looked down.
And what time was it?
2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And so I looked down, I said, what's going on? Of course, he doesn't speak English, I don't speak Swahili. But then I start hearing this commotion on the front of the apartment. So I walked to the front of the apartment, and my apartment was on the 4th floor. And I looked down, and it's walled, as many of the properties there are, and standing, or I should say swaying, on the wall was an African man, naked as a jaybird.
Buck naked.
Didn't
and
have a
this is right in
stitch
your
on.
like apartment.
Yes, he's right there, and I'm looking like, what the heck? And he's just swaying and swaying, and he's screaming, he's yelling out, "Oh, Mama, I loves you, I loves you." And he doesn't see me, of course, because it's nighttime, and I'm just looking at him. But he awoke everybody in our apartment, and we all started.
And were you scared at any point?
I was never, no.
Because in the book it talks about the character was sort of based on you, but she had a relationship with one of these men and met him before he became this genocider. And in the book, someone shows up in her apartment,
That's
but
different.
to
That's a
kill
very different,
her.
yeah.
And there was what do they call it? Retaliation killings that happened
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
Okay, so that's an interesting. So back to the safaris in Rwanda. I'm going to pull up the next slide, which may be the elephant that you were. Yep, there it is.
Okay.
So the elephant thing. Now this isn't the elephant that charged you.
No,
But you
it's
had a
not.
lot of adventures, and this is just, I mean, beautiful. Where was this?
This is in Tarangire.
Tarangire,
which is
okay.
it's a game park in Tanzania. But one day I was on safari to talk about the charging. I was on safari with 3 other UN staffers, and I'm tall. I'm almost, I'm 5'10", 5'11", and one of
Yeah,
the
with the heels on, I'm your height.
yeah. And one of the people we were safaring with was Paul, and Paul is probably about 6'3". Well, he and I are just taking a little walk, and I noticed that there's an elephant. I could see her back, or its back, and I said, "Oh, I have my camera. I want to get a better picture." And there was a lot of tall grass between us and the elephant, and so he, being clever, he squatted down. He said, "Climb up on my shoulders," and so I did. I said, "What a great idea!" Well, the minute I stood up, he stood up with me on his shoulders, the elephant started charging. And for that instant that I was up on his shoulders before we put me down, I saw a baby, the hump of a baby elephant.
So she was protecting.
She was protecting. All of a sudden I went from 6 feet to 12 feet.
So we're going to pull up another slide. This one, what is that?
Okay, the Kilimanjaro is, that's actually a watercolor that I bought while I was in Tanzania.
And below?
And below that is the Hotel Rwanda. That is the way the swimming pool looked at that time. And
you talk about that in the book.
I talk about that.
So let's go to the next slide really quick too. And the next one this is another experience that you had. Did you get to see a lot of these?
Lots and lots of lions,
We're gonna
yes.
pull that down. And you talk about in the book safaris and different adventures that happened theoretically that you had, but not with a boyfriend, because
Right.
this is a fictional character. Was there something culturally you enjoyed that you want to talk about, or something that you wanted to go do that maybe you didn't go to?
There was something I was invited to do, and I didn't know at the time it was how unique that was.
And we got about 5 minutes left. So
Okay, one of the workers at the UN was a Maasai, but they don't walk around. He was wearing a suit and tie, coming to work every day. And he was getting ready to have a ceremony. He invited me. He said, "Would you come? Would you be interested in coming to my meat eating ceremony?" Well, I'm a vegetarian. And I said,
and you've been a vegetarian since the 70s?
I've been a vegetarian for the past 47 years.
So he asked you to go to a meat eating ceremony?
He asked me to come to the meat eating ceremony.
And what's the purpose of the ceremony again?
It is the point at which the boys or the young men are now allowed to eat away from the women.
So
when they're
before
little,
that they have to...
They eat with the women.
And this guy was in his 20s though, right?
He was probably 19 or 20.
So he was a little old to be having this...
That's why, I guess when they do it. I don't know, Heather. Anyway, he invited me, and I was excited to go, but I didn't want to drive at night by myself. So I ended up not being able to go because my partner, who was going to drive with me, a fellow, he ended up having to do something for the judge he worked for, and I wasn't able to go to the ceremony. It was a big disappointment because I know that no white person had ever been invited to it before.
And he, when you told me you were vegetarian, I was envisioning that he maybe had this like array of food.
He promised
probably.
me. He promised me that the women would make sure that I had things to eat that weren't animals, and I said I would come.
So there's about 3 minutes, couple minutes left. Do you want to? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to talk to the audience about?
Well, I would, but we really haven't talked about the book so much as the experiences in Africa, and which are just rich with details. But I think that.
And do you have any regrets that you went there?
No, never.
None at all. Okay.
It was the highlight of my career.
Okay.
It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, which I value greatly. But I think that what it showed me, and the reason that I even got around to writing this book, because I've never written anything before, and was that when I came back from Rwanda, I realized that I didn't have an adequate understanding by my lights of why it took place. And so I started doing a lot of research. I started putting some of my own experiences on paper, and lo and behold, it became a book. And I think that the main thing I would hope that the book conveys to anybody is that the importance of looking at ourselves and recognizing the prejudices that each of us has, and being the labeling. We had Hutu and Tutsi, and these things led, when taken to an extreme, led to this kind of action. And I would hope that we can do something to stop that.
Well, folks can, here's the book again, and folks can go to your new Facebook page that you have. And what's the Facebook page again?
It's Sally Assante Writer.
Sally Assante Writer, and they can order this from you there.
Yes.
We was hoping we'd have some copies here, but I got one of the newest ones off the press, and they can order it through Amazon, I guess.
Yes, you can have a Kindle version and the print version.
Well, we didn't get to all the questions.
Okay.
So I think I have to come to Mexico to interview you and some of the other expats that live in Lake Chapala. I think that would be really fun. And, I guess we got just 2 seconds left. Anything else you want to leave?
All I would say is thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I do hope you will come down to Lake Chapala, and we'll pick up where we left off.
Thank you. And to the audience, make this a great Tags week by conserving, reusing, and rethinking about the way that you choose to live here in Silicon Valley and beyond. Thank you for joining us. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, SVTAGS.
Okay.
Thank you.